All right, y'all, thanks for coming out. Welcome to Juvenile Sentencing Reform Day. This event was created out of deep love for our children and an understanding of the fragility and significance of their lives. Today marks the day we stand up for kids in Minnesota and say we will no longer accept children being thrown into a system that, that is so gravely inhumane. When you leave here today, we hope you feel empowered with the knowledge that we can change these horrific sentencing laws. We can create a more just and holistic system that truly helps meet the needs of children when they commit crimes by helping integrate them back into society and prosper. So we really thank y'all for being out, coming out today. Juvenile Sentencing Reform Minnesota was created to support legislation to stop excessive sentences for kids. We also share the stories of those incarcerated, create a network for friends and family of those impacted, and then we plan to support individuals when they are released as well. Our first presenters today are Avra and Anagnostis, the founder of Juvenile Sentencing Reform Minnesota, and Antonio Espinosa, founder of Art from the Inside. Avra is a childhood friend of Roberto Lopez-Rios. In 2001, Roberto was sentenced to life in prison when he was only 16. Antonio is a retired corrections officer and the founder of Art from the Inside. He envisions a correctional system where people come out stronger and more resilient than when they entered, supported by a community committed to their success. We aren't here without these folks today, so why don't y'all go ahead and give them a round of applause.
We're going to let Antonio start here because he's a better public speaker. Go ahead.
Welcome. That's me in Stillwater Prison, one of the cultural events that I created for the incarcerated people there. I'm a fun guy. I'm a real person. I treat everyone like how they should be treated, and that's why I have a good rapport with a lot of the incarcerated people at Stillwater. My dedication, and I'm talking too fast, but my dedication is to see people grow from their mistakes. And the reason why I say that is because I myself, originally from New York City, the Bronx, been through my trials, and I could have been myself. I could have been in prison myself, doing the things I was doing at the time when I was 18, 19, 20. So God gave me an opportunity to fix that, correct that, and gave me an opportunity to come out to Minnesota to do this job, to do this work. And I didn't know why he sent me out here, but he sent me out here to do something for him. And throughout my vision of coming out here, I got to see what I could do to try to help the incarcerated people in Minnesota. So I'm also the founder of Art from the Inside. I'll give you a little story about that. It was 3 years ago when one of my coworkers was murdered at Stillwater Prison, and it was horrible over there. It was horrible for the incarcerated, and it was horrible for the people that worked there. And it was the first time that a murder happened for a correctional officer in the state of Minnesota. So I think that the people in charge didn't know what to do. And so opportunities were taken away from the incarcerated people. And I started thinking about what could I do to try to bring some peace or try to bring something new and to try to honor my friend's life. And the sacrifice was his life, and this is what I'm doing to try to change it. So I created Art from the Inside to create a vehicle. The art is just a vehicle for the conversation of incarceration. And there's so many different branches about that. You know what I'm saying? We have the people who are incarcerated, the victims, the community. You know, everyone is impacted by incarceration. And so I'm trying to be creative and using this platform to have people come out and help us with juvenile justice system. And last year, when I had when we had our first exhibit, Avra came out with her children and her family and friends, and they were cheering for Chucky. Chucky is one of the incarcerated guys in Stillwater, and that's how I got to meet her energy, and I knew that I was going to work with her down the line, one way or another, somewhere I was going to work with her, and here we are today. And I'm here to support her, and I'm here to support you guys with your family members incarcerated, and whatever I could do to try to change the laws and policies, that's what I'm going to do. So together we could do it together. We could be effective. And with that, I am going to send you to Avra, who is very energetic, and this is her thing. I'm supporting her. I'm proud of you. You know what I'm saying? And I know you got this.
Is that better? Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for being here, like Antonio said. And can you all hear me? Okay. All right. So when I was 14, my best friend went to prison. He was given a life sentence, and he was 16 years old. The last time I saw my friend Roberto, who I call Chucky, in the free world, we were playing a make-believe game while we waited for the bus. Chucky was holding me over the edge of the bus stop bench as I pretended to be Rose from the movie Titanic. He held me as I balanced with outstretched arms and told me he would never let go. Those of you who are old enough to know the Titanic movie probably can imagine. I think about this moment often because it illustrates the silly and imaginative teenagers we were. 3 days after we pretended to be Jack and Rose, he was thrown into the adult criminal justice system, where he remains to this day. Over 20 years have passed, and Chucky and I are still best friends. I have traveled the world, become a teacher, created a business, and had a family. Chucky has only been in 3 buildings. I wish this was not our story. I really wish it was not the story of at least 95 other individuals in Minnesota given extreme adult sentences as children. And I really wish, and I really, really wish, this country was not writing the same story for thousands of other children. Chucky and I are passionate and persistent people. Over the years, we would try to organize around this issue and always hit dead ends. Usually I was getting sent to Perry, and my emails were bouncing back because she has a U of M email, and I didn't know why. All right. 2 years ago, the universe began to show us many signs that the time was now. These signs culminated in Chucky's comrade and spiritual twin, Myon Burrell, being released from prison. Additionally, a very special person, who knows who he is, facilitated us creating this organization. We know deep in our hearts that the time to act is now. No matter where a person stands on the issue of public safety, from abolishing the police to wanting a bigger police force, we all agree that we want safe communities. In order for this to happen, children need to thrive. When we work to heal our sweet children, we create healthy and balanced adults. They stop the cycle of violence, and society benefits as a whole. Chucky and I think it is critical to begin this discussion by addressing the fact that many children in prison were perpetrators of violent acts, some and not all, resulting in the loss of a precious life. We cannot ignore this. I personally know what it's like to lose a loved one at the hand of someone else. So does Chucky. It is possible to be an advocate on the behalf of victims and also recognize the scientifically proven differences in the brains of children and adults. Severe sentences do not prevent kids from committing crime. Ensuring they have support, mental health resources, and love does. This event is a dedication to our friendship. It is a dedication to every single individual impacted by these tragic laws. Chucky even funded most of this event, which is hard to do when you make 50 cents an hour. He did this as a way of proving his commitment to this fight. Chucky and I want you all to walk away with a sense of empowerment and urgency. We want you to know that you can take action. These laws are changing around the country right now. We have allies everywhere. For example, this guy, never in Chucky's wildest dreams did he think he would collaborate with a prison guard. Chucky wants you to know he has not lost hope or his drive for action after 2 decades of hell, and he prays you will all join our fight for justice. Thank you.
Let's give them another round of applause, guys. Yo, I really cannot express my gratitude for Avra, like, putting this together. You know, just like a year ago, it seems like I was talking to Avra on the phone and just like trying to get involved with this organization, and since then, you know, every week there's been like a Zoom call or a phone call that she's helped facilitate. So there's a lot of work that goes into this kind of work, and like I said, we really appreciate the two of y'all, and thank y'all for spearheading this. Next, our next speaker actually couldn't make it out today, so instead he sent a video, which is like, works too, you feel me? So I wanted to introduce Preston Shipp from the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth. Preston is a former prosecutor in Tennessee and current senior policy counsel for the Campaign of Fair Sentencing of Youth. The organization leads efforts to end extreme sentences for youth around the country. And there you go right there. Y'all enjoy.
Hello, my name is Preston Shipp, and I serve as Senior Policy Counsel for the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, which is a national organization that focuses on abolishing life without the possibility of parole and other extreme sentences for children. And I'm sorry that I'm not with you in person today, but I'm so very glad that you are having this meeting, because we are in a moment where there is a strong national trend away from extreme sentences for children, and it is past time for Minnesota to join other states like Arkansas and West Virginia and Utah, Wyoming, Texas. There are so many states that have already passed legislation to abolish life without parole for children, and I'm excited that Minnesota has this opportunity to join them. So my background, I come to this work through a sort of unconventional route. I started my career as a prosecutor here in Nashville, Tennessee. I went to law school to be a prosecutor. That is really my only reason for going to law school, is I believed I was going to be a career prosecutor. I very much was interested in criminal law, very much valued public safety. I valued accountability. I valued protecting the rights of victims. And so when I got out of law school, after I clerked for a couple of years for a judge, I went to work in the Tennessee Attorney General's office and just thought that was going to be my career. And I slept well at night. You know, I was part of, handing out sentences, very extreme sentences for young people. But I just believed, if you do the crime, you do the time, and I believed in the system, that it was functioning as it needed to. And that started to change for me several years into my practice when the college that I attended here in Nashville started a college prison program where they took classes out to a local prison and had folks who were incarcerated there signed up, earning college credit. And the guy who ran the program was one of my major professors. He knew that I was a prosecutor. He wanted to offer a pre-law class. So he called me up and invited me to come out there and teach, which was, it was a little nerve-wracking to be a prosecutor going out to a prison to teach classes, but it seemed like a great opportunity. I was not prepared for what I found when I got there. Um, as happy as I was that folks out there were pursuing education, I was not prepared for just how gifted they all were, just how committed they were to their own rehabilitation, just how much they were looking forward to a second chance. They just needed an opportunity to prove it to somebody. And, you know, I was in there in a room with 15 remarkable human beings, any one of whom I would have been very proud to have as a neighbor. And I started rooting for those people. I wanted them to get their shot, but many of them were serving sentences so long, including life without parole, for crimes they committed when they were sometimes younger than 18 years old. They didn't have any realistic expectations that they were going to get those opportunities. And that started to really trouble me. I felt the ground kind of shifting. I stopped. My faith in the system was shaken. I started wondering, well, why do we talk about how we value rehabilitation? We talk about valuing second chances and redemption stories, and yet the policies that we have in place, particularly when we give extreme adult sentences to someone who is not yet old enough to vote or serve on a jury or sign a contract or get married, you know, why are we pursuing these sort of vengeful policies when these people do have such incredible potential to move beyond their worst moment, and be fantastic citizens, start families, you know, work good jobs. So I ended up leaving my career as a prosecutor, um, and got involved in criminal justice reform work. And I'm so thankful that I'm now on staff with the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, and will absolutely do anything that I can to support the work here in Minnesota as you look to join those other states that I mentioned that have already passed this kind of legislation. So let me just tell you very quickly sort of about the national trend and kind of where we are with this issue nationally so that Minnesota kind of knows how to locate itself. Um, Back a little over 10 years ago, there were only 5 states who would not sentence a child to die in prison. That really started to change when the US Supreme Court started getting involved in a series of decisions where they really, really limited when these kinds of extreme sentences can be imposed against such a young person. And the Supreme Court really hung its hat on the new science of adolescent brain development. Scientists are just really catching up to what we've always known from common sense. Anybody who's a parent or remembers being a teenager, we know that kids are not just little adults, that they are fundamentally different. The Supreme Court has said they are constitutionally different because their brains are not yet fully developed. They do not appreciate consequences and risk in the same way that an adult does. They're impulsive, you know, they lack self-control. They're very susceptible to peer pressure. Trauma in particular hits them particularly hard. And so, you know, they're so different from adults in their decision making. That's why we don't let them join the military. That's why we don't let them sign a contract, because they're not anticipating all the consequences of their conduct. And so when a child can pull a trigger just as easily as an adult can, but their brain is not thinking about the same way and they are not as culpable. And so the court started saying we need to hold children accountable in age appropriate ways that focus on rehabilitation, children's unique rehabilitative potential. And so that's what we started to see after the court started weighing in. We started seeing some very conservative states, Texas, Wyoming, Utah, Arkansas, West Virginia, passing laws saying, you know, a child can't be sentenced to life without parole. A child should never be told that they have no hope, but be condemned to die in prison. Since I've been with the campaign, Oregon has passed a law, Ohio passed a law, Virginia passed a law, and Maryland this year passed a law, all of them saying that after a kid serves X number of years, usually 15 to 20 years, that they need to have a second look. A parole board needs to take a look at them and see who that person has become. And so that's what Minnesota has the opportunity to do with legislation is you say that you cannot sentence a child to die in prison, no matter what they do. You don't condemn them to die in prison. You always hold out hope, because kids are our most valuable resource and they're the most vulnerable members of our society. And so we have to be careful how we treat them. It's never a get out of prison free card. It's never automatic. It's never guaranteed. Arkansas is only paroling about 60% of the people who come up for review. That means 4 out of 10 stay in prison because for whatever reason, the parole board looks at them and says, they're not ready yet. They haven't done what they need to do yet. We don't believe that we can, in good faith, say that this person no longer poses any kind of a threat. And so it's always just an opportunity, never a guarantee. But enough states are doing this now, and they've been doing it for long enough now that we're seeing incredible success all over the country. Over 750 people have been released nationwide who were told as children that they would die in prison, and they are doing remarkably well. A study was recently done by a couple of professors at Montclair State University, and they looked at 174 former juvenile lifers and found a recidivism rate, a rate of committing a new offense after their release of only 1%. And if you think about the national recidivism rate, in Tennessee, the recidivism rate is like 50 to 60%. People are going out and committing new crimes. When people who were given these long sentences as children get a second look after 15 or 20 years, and the parole board looks at them and says, you know what, that person has done what they needed to do, we're going to give them an opportunity, then overwhelmingly, almost 100% of the time, they're getting it right. And those people are doing exactly what we want them to do. They're out there, we've got a network that we sponsor of formerly incarcerated kids, and we've got school teachers, substance abuse counselors, entrepreneurs. We've got somebody who started a printing company. We've got reentry specialists and restorative justice practitioners. I work with a number of folks who are formerly incarcerated. They're starting families. They're doing everything that we want them to do. They're mentoring at-risk youth, trying to make sure that other people don't go down the same road that they did. And so this is proven common sense, measured reform that even somebody, who got into this work based on concern for victims, based on concern for public safety, is something I feel very, very positive about. It's exactly the kind of criminal justice reform that we want to see. Republicans can agree on it. Democrats, the sponsor of our bill in Ohio, a very conservative Republican, the sponsor of our bill in Maryland, a very progressive Democrat. This is not a partisan issue. This is a moral imperative that we get this done because kids should not be condemned to die in prison. I also want to just briefly mention we do want to be cognizant that nobody is going to get such an extreme sentence if they did not commit a very serious crime. Overwhelmingly, these are homicide crimes. And so we're dealing with a victim, we're dealing with a family who's lost a loved one, and we always want to be mindful of that. And there are certainly times where family members or survivors of youth violence are very opposed to the person who caused their harm getting a second chance. And we don't want to minimize that, and we don't want to try to pretend like that's not the case. But what I do want to say is that the campaign works with a network of survivors and victims of youth violence. We work with people in Illinois, we have folks in Texas, we have an incredible man in Maryland, all of whom, though they've been touched and their lives have been forever altered by youth violence, nevertheless support these sorts of legislative changes because they recognize that kids are different. And so I think it's very important for us to remember as we look at legislation like this, that justice is not some kind of a zero-sum game, where if we care about a child offender getting a second chance when they're 35 years old or 40 years old, that somehow that means we care less about the rights and the needs of victims. In fact, we recently hired a new staff person whose job is going to be doing outreach to people who have been impacted by youth violence, because it's so important for us to maintain relationships with them and try to see that they get what they need. Because again, the circle of our compassion should be expansive enough. The parameters should include everyone that's touched by this kind of harm. And so it's a real honor to get to work with supported victims. It's wonderful to get to see people do well when they get their second chance. And so this sort of legislation, what Minnesota can do right now, is about hope. It's about being true to our best values, that no child is born bad, that no child is irredeemable, that no child should be ever thrown away as if their life does not have potential. Because we all of us, are valuable. Certainly the most, as I said, the most vulnerable members of our society who have so much potential to transcend those moments. None of us are just the worst thing that we've ever done. And so, as I've said, thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you. I'm looking forward to supporting the group that's working on this, the lawmakers who are working on this in any way that we can. We want to see Minnesota become the 27th state to abolish life without the possibility of parole as a sentencing option for kids. And so I look forward to getting to partner with you in that. And I thank you so much for your attention to this issue.
We really appreciate Preston for taking the time out of his day to go ahead and create that video for us. Like you said, Minnesota, it's time for us to take action, right? The rest of the nation is working towards reform, and we need to be in line with that. Sweet. So our next speaker is Myon Burrell. At the age of 16, Myon was charged, tried, convicted, and sentenced to life for a crime he did not commit. He spent more than 18 years of his life in prison, and in that time, he was forced to endure extreme hardships, pain, and deprivation of basic human rights. He comes today to be the voice of those who have experienced the same trauma, those who are suffering right now, but don't have a space to speak for themselves. So let's welcome Myon up here.
Coming out and supporting, this juvenile justice reform.
Take the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can take it out.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? No, so I didn't put together a speech or anything for today. Like I came out, like you said in the introduction, to be the voice for those who can't speak for themselves. And I don't want to put nothing on paper. I would stumble over my words, or something that wasn't really coming from the heart. So I think that everything we do in life, it got to be based on sincerity, in order for us to be successful in it. And right now, we need each other as a people. Like you said before, I was tried and convicted of a crime I didn't commit. Spent a long time in prison. Went through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations on my own time, but I didn't come out to make this about me. There's so many other people that are suffering behind a system that's created to function, predatorial system that was created to function on preying on not just people of color, but the youth. So many youth are sentenced to life in prison, and they're unaware of the severity of their situation. And it's strategically done. You can see how the people in this system, how they prey on them, and how they ask them questions that are impossible for them to be able to answer, and put them in situations where, how can you do life when you haven't even lived life long enough to have anything to compare it to? And so many of us are oblivious to what we're going through until time had passed, and you're looking back in hindsight, you saying, man, I wish I could have graduated high school. I wish I could have went to prom. I wish I could have did things that we, out here in the free world that we just look at as a given. It's something that we just do. But everybody doesn't have the opportunity to do that. So before I start, I wanna say that I'm not minimizing the loss of anybody's family members or anybody's loved ones from at the hands of these juveniles, because a lot of these sentences did come from serious crimes that have been committed at the hands of these juveniles. But at the same time, when you look at these people that you're sentencing to spend the rest of their natural life in prison, I think that the first thing that is removed from the equation is the humanity of these children. They're dehumanized, and a lot of times, people in those positions, they actually demonize them to where they can justify the mistreatment and basically the predatorial acts that take place when they're taking things from these children. I sat here and I just listened to Preston speak. When I first came up here, the first thing I was going to do was go and talk about all of the brothers and sisters that I know that are behind the wall, that are suffering right now. But when I heard him speak and I see how his transition into him coming and actually being an advocate for juveniles that are sentenced unjustly, and how it was like, how it transpired, it made me think like, okay, well, he talked about all of this statistics, all these statistics about the human brain, about the immaturities of a child. But to me, is that when these things are taking place, very rarely does a person take a step back and think, okay, how would I feel if my child was the one that was in that seat? So the humanity is removed from the equation. They don't even look at these children are being sentenced as their children or as somebody that as they even view as being close to them. They look at these children as other, or as just, sacrificial lambs. Their lives don't really matter anyway, so nobody's gonna really miss it. These statistics are being put in, they're being logged, and okay, well, we have the highest conviction rate of this, and we're cleaning up the streets, but you're not looking at the people that are being put in these cages, the children that are being put in these cages. I heard Avra speak when she first came up, and she talked about how her and Roberto, how their last time together, how they were reenacting a scene in the Titanic. And this is things that children do. You feel me? Like, these are things that transpire in kids' life, playing, just, idle activities. But then not soon after, like, he had to go and transfer into a whole different world where nothing was funny. Like, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't, there's no more reenacting anything. Like, everything is serious and it's life or death. And not just that, but now you're being told that you're going to spend the rest of your natural life in prison. One of the most painful experiences I had from being in prison at the age of 16, doing the rest of my life, like I'm home now, through the grace of the Creator and all the people that fought for me, I appreciate it. But that whole time, I wasn't just spending 18 years of my life in prison. I was in prison doing the rest of my natural living life in prison. Like, I was actually sentenced to die in prison. The sentence was a sentence that I could have actually, died there. And that's what I was told. And so I remember Roberto, I remember when we were kids and his daughter coming up. I see his daughter in here today. And I remember her just being a baby. My son being a baby. And when you're a child and you have children, or you have siblings, you have people that care about you, they ask questions like, when are you coming home? Even though I was in prison for a crime I didn't commit, I was still doing life. And I remember so many times people asked me, when are you coming home? And I couldn't give them a definitive answer. So I would say, on God willing, I'll be home soon. My son, God willing, I'll be home soon. So years went by. He's being traumatized. I'm being traumatized behind the wall from my own personal life experiences. And I'm telling God, when will I be home soon? And time passes, decades. And so now, you're sitting in there and you saying, Tom, I'll be home soon. But then you see the people that you care about, they actually, they dwindle off because that's not a definitive answer. And as time passes, say, okay, you said soon. But it's been 10 years, it's been 15 years, it's been 20 years. You're not home yet. And you can see, you know, your family, your loved ones, your friends, everybody fall off. Everybody disappear. And so then that's when that hopelessness comes in. That's what that place breeds is. It breeds hopelessness. And you see so many broken human beings up in there, so many children that came in there that are broken because they were told that this is where they're going to die at. And not only, and even if they had faith that things would change for them in their hearts, they sit there and they watch the world fall off. They watch everything that they know disappear. You know, I was 16 years old when I went to prison. I was 34 years old. Like, I just turned 35. Everything is new to me. Everything. Everybody that I cared about, the majority of people that I was close to, perished. They died while I was in prison. And I had to come home and I had to figure things out on my own time. And not just that, I had to face the people that that could no longer hold on because I couldn't give them a definitive answer. And so I'm coming here today to tell y'all, so when you look at these, you know, they have an exhibit in the other room. Look at those people, look at those children, read those stories. Like, those are our children, you know what I mean? Those are your siblings, those are your father, you know what I mean? Could you imagine being born and your whole life being told that your dad's gonna come home one day and you never be able to see him outside in the free world? Or could you imagine your child being in a seat and somebody telling him or her that they're gonna spend the rest of their natural life in prison, that's where they're gonna die? And you might be the only person that's fighting for them while the rest of the world's telling you to move on with your life? Could you imagine that type of trauma? And so these are the things that transpire behind that wall. And that's why I'm coming to be the voice for those who can't speak for themselves, because it happens every day. That's the sad part. Like, it's not something that's unnormal. Like, it actually transpires all the time. But we, as you know, the more time that passed with me out here in the real world, the more I realize how unnormal the circumstances are behind that wall. Even a lot of times I get asked questions about, you know, my experience. And the sad part about those questions is that my thought process was that everybody will understand what I went through. But then now you deal with a whole nother trauma, because now you're an alien in a world where, I mean, it's not normal. And then you have to come to the realization, you have to acknowledge the fact that what you went through is not normal. And that's what you're designed to, that's what that machine is designed to do, is make you function as if that's normal in that place. So I mean, before I get on anything else, I wanted, Roberto, he paid out his pocket for this, right? And I know, I mean, like, I came to speak about, but like, I don't think that that's something that should have ever happened. And so before I get off the stage, I just want y'all to know that we should make an intentional effort to be able to put him, to reimburse him his money to where we can continue to have these discussions. And furthermore, to where this stuff can go out. Like, I don't want this to die here. Like, I come out and I vocalize myself all the time. I express myself. I express the situations that are transpiring behind that wall. And it's so many people that say, oh, that's so hard, that's so painful, that's so, oh my God, you know. But nobody, but once we leave these rooms, it just, it dwindles off. Like, we need to be the people to stand up and cause that change right now. And God willing, like, Avra, she has Cash App, you know, you get it, you guys can contact her, you know what I mean, we could do that, but I want to continue to do this. Like I said before, I didn't want to make this about myself, like, but I did want to come and be able to explain to you guys the humanity of, and the deprivation of the humanity that's taking place behind that wall, but the humanity of those children that were thrown away. And that's the question I always ask people when I mean, it's so simple, but that's the question that I ask them when they ask me about those conditions. I say, are we the people that throw away our children? Maribel Morgan, right? So she was the assistant warden when I was in St. Cloud Correctional Facility as a juvenile. Her and it was several other staff that were there that actually treated me like a human being. I believe that, I wholeheartedly believe that it was that humane treatment that helped me to be able to hold on to the rope of the Creator and to keep faith that one day things would change, and have faith in humanity and human beings as people, because you'll lose that in there. Like, you'll become a pessimist when every time you turn around, things are being taken away from you and you don't have any control over what's taking place. But they were there, and they were helping us as children. And for her, like, I appreciate you. Like, I'll never forget the things that you did to help me to hold on to that. Like, I didn't have a mother. A little bit about myself, right, is that, like, less than a month after me being incarcerated, I was in the county jail, and my mother came to visit me, and on her way home, she ended up perishing. She died in a car accident leaving from visiting me in Hennepin County Jail. And so I went into the system without a mother. You know, I have a sister, she's my right hand, like, I have family they support, but it's a difference when, as a child, to go through those type of experiences without your mother. I mean, you might have your father. My father was there. I thank him for everything that he did. But, like, you know, especially as, you know, a man, a lot of us, we have that attachment to our mothers. And I didn't have that mother, but they did. They stepped in and they actually took on that maternal spot in my life, you know, and actually tried to help. They seen the injustice and they stand as much as they could. They stood out against it, and I thank you. We need more people like that out here. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time, but, like, I really wanted to, you know, reach out to y'all and explain that, you know, to where you may have a little bit of insight on what takes place behind that wall. And not just that, but when you look at those cases, that you don't just see cases. When you don't look at those that black and white, those words on paper, that you don't just see a case, that you actually see the human being that's being that's going through the trials and tribulations that come behind those cases. So with that, you know, I appreciate y'all coming out again. I appreciate you listening to me. God willing, I said something that will encourage y'all to actually go out and do something to change these conditions. And I mean, anything that I can do to help, I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm easily accessible. This is my call. This is what my purpose in life. With that, and, you know, I appreciate y'all again, and thanks for coming out.
Yo, that's so real. We really appreciate you being out here, Myon, for real. Like, we're glad you're home. We're glad you're home. All right. Thanks, y'all. Our next speaker is Terrell Shaw. Terrell was incarcerated at the age of 18. He served 22 plus years in prison. He was also a mentor for the Youth Offender Program and saw the justice system's treatment of youth firsthand. So why don't y'all give Terrell a round of applause as well.
First, I want to thank Avra for allowing this, starting this. Can y'all hear me? All right. First, I just want to thank Avra for setting this whole thing up and allowing me to speak here. Then I want to thank everybody for coming here. My name is Terrell Shaw. Like you said, I was released from prison on March 31st of this year. I had served like 22 plus years in prison for murder. And while I was in prison, I became a mentor in the Youth Offender Program. And I'm just here to tell the stories of the young people who I work with. You often hear about juveniles committing horrible crimes, murder, robbery, rape. You hear about them getting their just desserts by the justice system. But what you don't hear about is that these young people are not properly being represented by their legal counsel, that they are serving longer sentences than adults who commit the same crimes, and the extreme suffering they endure during their prison terms. They never fully understand why the suffering is happening, but today we get a better understanding. First, like I said, that was one youth. He was 14 years old. He barely stood like 5 feet when he entered prison for killing and seriously injuring a rival gang member who targeted his family. Later, when he grew from a 14-year-old to an adult, I was joking with him. I said, you thought you was tough when you first came in, because you know he had that little bravado, but I understood it. He responded by saying, I had to be tough. I was afraid that somebody would try to hurt me. Imagine a kid about this tall sitting around in prison with 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, just walking around like wondering like, how will I get to this? I know he was terrified, because when I came in 18, I was terrified. You don't know what to expect. Another youth, he wasn't tough like the first youth that I just mentioned. For years, he was a victim of sexual assault at the hands of older inmates. He was forced to do things that he never wanted to do. He was so traumatized by the time he became an adult, it had altered his sexual identity and his orientation. Then I had another person. This was a very close friend of mine. I watched him carried out the courtroom after being found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. He always declared that he never meant to kill his victim, that he only wanted to rob him, that the gun got caught in his coat and it accidentally went off. He said that the adults that were with him had gotten 10 years in exchange for their testimonies. He could never wrap his head around it. He later killed himself. They found him hanging in his cell. He hung himself with his belt. For years, he would always say, I'm going home, I'm going home. But eventually, he realized that he was never going home. And he would always tell me, I'm not going to do this time. I'm not going to do this time. But as you grow older, you just thinking that, oh, he's just talking like he's not serious. But one day I woke up and some of the homeboys told me, man, you know, your man just killed himself. And it messed me up, because that was like my ace. Like, we was together every day. And they used to see him like that, see how he went out. And not only that, how his family responded to it. It was just heartbreaking. Then there was another youth offender who I mentored. He always declared that he was innocent of the crime of murder. The district attorney and the police took the word of an unreliable confidential informant over physical evidence. While he was in jail serving life, the prison administration refused to allow him to attend his mother's funeral. He watched a recording of it on an old television screen. As I stood next to him, I can only imagine, like, man, what is he going through right now? Like, he's actually watching his mother's funeral on the television. Just 16, 17 years old. Then there was a young native who killed his father. But this little guy, he was so talented. He could write, he could draw, he was very smart. But the thing with him was, all the other people that was in jail with him was upset because of his crime. I guess in their culture, that was something that was untolerated. Plus, he refused to get involved in all the racial gang violence that goes on inside of prison. On numerous occasions, he was assaulted and assaulted and assaulted. And I would just look at him and just be like, man, what can you do? Well, anyway, this little young man spent majority of his young life walking through prison corridors alone, by himself, because nobody wanted to deal with him, because he refused to be in the gang and he refused to be racist. I could tell you 1,000 stories like these, having witnessed them firsthand, because I was there, I saw them. I was with them every day. I seen them cry, I seen their tears. Shit, I cried, I had tears. So then, eventually, there was a new program established called the Youth Offender Program, but it was more of an experiment. The Minnesota DLC did not know how to deal with this new influx of young inmates. On one hand, there were children but on the other, they were convicted felons. This program was started to protect them from the adult population. Early on, when I became a mentor, my job was to help them navigate through this system. But I was a child myself. I was only 2-3 years older than them, but I guess that was enough. But as a mentor, it's like sitting at the top and you have a bird's eye view of like what's really going on. And you see that, man, there has to be alternatives to what's actually going on and behind these walls, giving these young people these long terms of confinement. Many of these young men, they're low functioning. They have little reasoning skills. Most have anger issues. Many struggle to communicate, like they don't know how to say what they want. So their next alternative is, how do I get what I want? They're the first people that older inmates come to, recruit them in gangs, send them on assaults, whatever that may be. Tell them, hey, hold this. So now they have hooch in their cells, they have illegal drugs in their cells, and these be the ones who, some of them turn up to be drug addicts because they're the ones who, like you said, are the most influential to do drugs, peer pressure. As I mentioned earlier, some commit suicide, others harm themselves, many engage in assault, some are preyed upon by homosexuals, as I said before, which we would consider molestation. But this is the system that we send them to. This is where we put them after they've committed their crimes. So we are subjecting them to the same things that we're trying to save the public from. Doesn't make any sense. However, as the guy said on the screen, as they get older, their minds expand, and you get to see the skills that they have within them, the talents that they once lacked, is now developed. They gain better control of themselves. However, they are still in prison, and if we do not do something, they will remain in prison. This is highly unfair and unjust. Kids who commit crime should be given another shot to become productive members of society. I once read somewhere that you judge a nation on how it treats its incarcerated people. What are our leaders doing? We are actively engaged in throwing away our children's lives for mistakes they made when they were literally babies. We sanctioned them with a lifetime of imprisonment. Who can honestly, deep in their hearts, say that this type of so-called justice is the right course of action? What do these laws say about us as a nation? Thank you.
Just want to say thank you, Terrell, for your time, for your words. We really appreciate it. Just want to say thank you, Terrell, for your time, for your words. We really appreciate you taking time out and speaking to us today. Dope, y'all. So we heard from a lot of people. We still got a lot of time to go, but we're going to take some time right now, take a little 15-minute break. All right, what's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? I hope y'all had a good break, got some chips, got some water, enjoyed the fresh air a little bit. We're glad to have y'all back, glad to see y'all came back. So what we have next is a video of folks that are currently incarcerated. You can find all of these folks' stories in our storytelling room, so make sure to check it out after our last speaker today. But you'll hear from Roberto Lopez-Rios, Jerry Vang, and Jason Williams, as they were all given life sentences as children. And again, like I said, you can check their stories out in the storytelling room afterwards. Thanks.
I was 16 years old when I came into the prison system. My name is Roberto Lopez-Rios.
I was 16 when I first came to prison, a month after my birthday. Jason Williams.
I was 14. My name is Jerry Vang.
I really wasn't feeling nothing I could say, because I was like numb to everything, and I didn't know what I was going through or anything else, what anybody was saying to me. Nobody really explained nothing to me, so it was like, you're in jail, that's it, you know what I'm saying? Just deal with it, you know?
At first, I was just puzzled, not knowing, not being able to grasp the reality of the situation that I was in, arriving in prison with the life sentence.
It was coming down that, I believe it's Highway 10. You see that big old wall, and then we turn onto the street, and it's just like a medieval castle, you know what I'm saying? And that right there was quite intimidating. And just seeing and hearing doors clanking, locking, and guys yelling off the tier, you know, it was scary for me.
I felt scared. I felt alone. I felt abandoned. At that point in time, I didn't know what exactly I was feeling, but now that I'm older and I can reflect back on those times, I was lonely, I was scared, I was sad. I missed my mom.
When I first came in, I was a little scared, because you know, you're around grown people, you know, that they know what they think, they know how to feel. I don't know what to think or know how to feel about situations. I would just see fights and I was like, what's going on? You know, I didn't know. Everybody else around me knew what was going on except me.
You know, you just gotta keep moving and watch yourself, you know what I'm saying? Because you're in a whole environment with, you know, grown men, and you're just a kid.
When you come in here and you get thrown into prison, there is nobody trained to deal with a child's mentality. So you're left alone to deal with all these things, and your standard is based on a system that was designed for adults. Every treatment, every program, the time, the meals, everything's designed for a grown individual. So therefore, the needs of the children that come in so young are not met.
Because there was nobody my age there at that time. Nobody I could talk to. You know, staff didn't know what to do with me. They even said, we don't know what to do with you. We don't know where to put you. We don't, just stay out of trouble. That's the only advice they gave me, stay out of trouble, you know? But when you're messing with other guys, you're just trying to fit in with everybody because you don't know what to do, you get in trouble.
I was a young kid with big dreams. I became a young father. I went back to school. I wanted to be someone in the Latino community to kind of push forward better morals and values for some of the Latinos, because I know in my struggles growing up, seeing my brother get locked up when I was 12, it did something to me, and I was lost.
I was really into accounting. You know, my mom was an accountant, so that was part of my hopes and dreams, to be an accountant. And then I was really good at school. I just got lost somewhere, you know, rather mess with my friends and forgot about school and everything. So but I still had dreams of, you know, doing something better than what I was doing, you know?
I don't know if I really had any dreams then, because, you know, there was a lot of things going on in my life, and, you know, I was still trying to figure it out.
What kind of stuff is going on in your life?
Or just the instability at home, you know, and a lot of things that were going on in the streets with myself, and, you know, I was lost. You know, like I said, I was trying to find myself, and, you know, yeah, I was lost.
When I became a father, I realized that there was a better way of life, and I wanted to explore that. Whatever that norm was, I knew it was better than the way I lived and grew up. So when I went back to school and I was trying to get everything together to set a better example for my daughter and pave the way for her having a better life, I got caught in the legal justice system.
You know, my parents came from Laos, so, you know, the way they grew up was different, you know what I mean? And yeah, I wish I could have done, you know, a lot of things when I was young, but my opportunities wasn't there for myself.
It was just a sense of finding comfort, belonging, and safety among my peers, I guess you can put it, in the Latino community. And I found that in the streets, in the way of life that my older brother was living. And there was a lot of abuse, a lot of violence, and thus surviving was the only way. And what that consisted of is adapting to those ways of life in order to make it.
Well, what would help me is probably if there was people around me that were like me, you know what I'm saying, that been through what was going through, that could talk to me, could help me out. You know, I think I was the first person in my family that ever like been in prison, been in trouble. So my family didn't know what to do, you know, so I didn't have nobody to talk to, understand what I was going through at that time. You know, school tried to help me out a little bit, but they couldn't even understand what I was going through. You know, I was frustrated, you know, mad. I didn't understand what was going on half of the time, so I just lashed out, you know, and did stuff that I shouldn't have been doing.
I just learned to value life, you know, and I learned a lot. Like I said, that, and you know, like my values, morals, mean a lot more to me. You know what I'm saying? Because growing up, I didn't have much of that, and you know, nobody really showed me. So, yeah, that's the main thing. Is, you know, my values, morals. You know what I'm saying? All those things changed since I've been in.
I was a director over in Oak Park Heights, and she told me, she said, I don't care what you're in prison for, but when you're here, I'm gonna make sure you get some education. And I always respected her for that because she always was there to help me out.
I feel upset, disappointed, because I wasn't able to live up to what I was trying to do, to be a father to my daughter, to provide that other way of life. The whole situation, I mean, I didn't comprehend the seriousness of the things that occurred or that were about to occur. My mental state was not at that stage to understand the possible outcomes. But you live in a world where some things are just so normal that you don't think. And the influence that the outside environment has on you, you don't realize.
How I felt about what got me here, I avoided it at first. I avoided it for a long time. And then when I went to my first 27 review, and I had to explain everything, and it was just so much stuff built up in me, and I could feel myself wanting to cry because I was like, that's not me. Why would I do something like that? And I could feel pain, and it was just so much. And then it was so much that it came out that the psychology was seeing that, and she was like, I can see this is something you need to deal with. This is something you need to accept. So she told me, tell your story. Start telling your story to people. So once you start telling your story, it'll be easy for you to learn how to accept what you did. You know, so that's what I did. I started telling my story to people and helping them understand where I came from and why I did what I did. I mean, what I did was wrong. It was wrong, and it hurts me to this day that I did what I did. But I can't change the past. Only thing I can do is work to the future, and whatever I can do to help the future, help anybody coming in here, I'm gonna do. I don't want to ever see nobody go through what I did, go through everything I did at all.
So what could have helped to prevent that? I'm not sure, because I couldn't understand the full extent of the situation. And how do I deal with it now? Well, I work on myself. I try to remain positive, hold on to the little bit of humanity that I remember of who I used to be, try to be a good father. I educate myself. I'm trying to make this time count in a positive way to where I can impact other individuals for a better way of life. And that's the way I come into terms with it, in order not to kind of fall into that, I don't know the exact word for it, but it's to make this and the situation count for something positive.
Because it was all about self when I first came to prison. Then all of a sudden it was like, now help others. You have accountability to help others. Do that.
I know one thing, that kids don't belong in prison. That experience was so traumatic that it took many years for me to actually come into terms with it. And even now that I'm here years later, 20 years later, it's still hard for me to understand, how can you do this to a child? And from the material that I've been reading and what I've been looking into, I've always known that it was wrong. And I know people out there know this is wrong, but no one's really stepping up or saying anything about it. I guess they figure if you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist. But it does exist.
We want to start programs that will help them guys. You know what I'm saying? So we can sit down and say, we've been through what you've been through. Don't think we haven't. We're trying to teach you another way. Unless you want to stay here forever, we're trying to teach you another way. So we need more groups that will help them, to help rehabilitate them. Because when you catch them when they're young and catch them away from their friends and everything, they're willing to learn. You know, they're willing to change. It's just hard when you don't have that, and the only thing you do have is your friends here, and they want to hang with their friends, and it messes them up. It messes them up. The streets is not successful. Get out of the streets and find something different. Find some type of, something you like, that you want to build and you want to keep building, and you can be happy, you know? Not them streets. It's not where it's at, you know? Just, yeah.
Yo, there's so much power in that video, yo. It's so easy to forget that these are real people that are going through real things. These are real children that are being put away, doing real time every day. You know, and it just goes to show, like, the work does not stop when we leave these doors today. So I wanted to take the time to introduce our next speaker. From the Felony Murder Law Reform Minnesota, Tony Cater will be speaking next. They seek to change the outdated and unfair felony murder rule, which has allowed people who did not kill to be charged, convicted, and sentenced as if they committed the murder themselves. So let's welcome Tony up here.
Good afternoon. Nope, just take it off. Just take it off. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am Tony Cater, and I am a co-founder of Felony Murder Law Reform. Most of us here have never heard of felony murder law. If you didn't go to law school and you don't have an impacted family member, I doubt you've ever heard of this. But felony murder is a legal doctrine that allows anyone involved in a felony to be charged with the murder if a death occurs during the course of the felony, even if they did not kill anyone. They didn't know a killing was going to happen, and sometimes they're not even present when that murder took place. The situation occurred with my daughter and her best friend, and there were 6 people involved. My daughter and her best friend had a gun held to their head, and they were told if they screwed up the burglary, they would not have a problem killing them both. And when they tried to leave the apartment, They had a gun held to their head. They were locked in the apartment building and in the apartment and forced to lay on the floor and watch their friend be beaten and killed. And unfortunately, in our justice system, I say that very tentatively, that was not taken into consideration. What they wanted was murder convictions. And so they charged 2 young men sitting in a car outside, my daughter and her best friend, who were 18 and 19, and the 2 men who did beat and eventually kill this young man with first-degree murder. And all 6 of them faced life without parole. And as parents, sorry, you never expect this. And you warn your kids to be careful who they spend their time with. So if you're a kid in this room and you're hearing me, be careful who you spend your time with. But these laws are outdated. And these laws, we didn't know they were existed. And our attorneys were challenged with the task of explaining to us how our daughters, who had been going to be a part of a burglary, right, weren't being charged with burglary. They were being charged with first-degree murder and facing life without parole. And when we found out these laws dated back to the 1500s in England, they were carried into the United States, and we are the only country in the world that has common law. Their law system is based on common law, English legal system. We are the only ones left. Canada, England, Ireland, Scotland, and India have all abolished these laws. And then we found out Ohio, Hawaii, Kentucky, Michigan, and Massachusetts had abolished their laws. And then we found out that Arkansas, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, New York, North Dakota, Oregon, Washington limited the felony murder rules to the actual perpetrator of the homicide. So 2 years ago, we formed felony murder law reform. And the crossroads to being here today is what we now know from the Minnesota DOC, is that there are 473 people currently serving sentences in Minnesota prisons for a murder they didn't commit, yet they are convicted as murderers. Those sentences, on average, there are 30 people convicted every single year with an average of a 20-year sentence. And what we know from their numbers, is that in the last 10 years, we've got 22 kids under 18 years old being convicted of a murder they didn't commit and yet serving sentences as murderers. And if they take that to trial, they're committed to life without parole. And so they get 2 options. You take it to trial because you didn't kill anybody, and you didn't intend for anybody to be killed, and you didn't participate in that, and you will be sentenced to life without parole. And we have women at Shakopee Women's Prison who were not present when the murder happened, and they have life without parole. The shooters got plea deals. One of them will be home at 26 years with his family, and Maureen will leave Shakopee in a casket. She was not present when that murder took place. And the stories are over and over, including Roberto, right? His story is tragic, and he was caught up in that. And it's a case of wrong situation, wrong time, wrong place, wrong people around you. And so we are determined to change this for going forward and going backwards. California reformed their laws in 2018, SB 1437, and theirs included a resentencing act. And so now in California, for the last 3 years, people who were convicted of murder are being resentenced under the crime they did commit instead of the crime of somebody else. And so we have a task force. We did pass a task force this year, and by the grace of God, we are meeting between now and January. And it is a well-rounded task force of county attorneys and police and Professor Moriarty and myself and other amazing people that we are studying the data. We're going to study our laws compared to the other laws in this nation. And we are going to make a recommendation on changes, and we're going to make a recommendation on resentencing. I'm not sure they know we're going to make that recommendation, but we'll be making that recommendation. And we are going to bring it, and we are going to change these laws. So no other child who's involved in a situation, the law holds it as reasonably foreseeable. It's reasonably foreseeable that this death is going to occur. And for many, they didn't even know there was a gun involved. My daughter didn't know there was a gun until it was held up in her face. And so I ask for your support. This is a mighty task. This is a big push, and we're going to need the power of the people to stand up when we bring this bill to say no more. We're not going to throw people away anymore for murders they didn't commit, especially children. We know that there are no less than 2 14-year-olds that were sentenced under aiding and abetting felony murder and got inherently long sentences for crimes they didn't commit. So thank you, Avra, and for everyone, Myon. Amazing, amazing. I'm in awe of these people as they speak, and thank you for the time. And fmlr.org, we do have a table out there, so stop by, get our information, but fmlr.org. There's stories, there's videos, and we will be having up-to-date information about the task force and how people can join us in raising their voices to change these laws. So, thank you.
We really appreciate Tony taking the time out to be here with us today. Like she said, check out their booth after our last speaker today and tap in with the community. Our next speaker comes from the Minnesota Coalition for Youth Justice. Malika Eban works as the Director of Community Strategy at the Legal Rights Center, a nonprofit public defense firm in Minneapolis. Her work is in building a more equitable and just criminal legal system, focusing on the system's interactions with youth and families. Let's welcome her up.
Good afternoon, y'all. Thanks so much for having us here today. Thank you all for the folks who've been here sharing their stories and for the powerful stories that we've been able to witness and experience together as a community this afternoon. As was mentioned, my name is Malika Eban. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at the Legal Rights Center. We're a nonprofit community-driven law firm. We represent youth and adults in Hennepin County Court. And we help to organize the Minnesota Coalition for Youth Justice. We know that juvenile sentencing and juvenile life without parole is just one small part of a really inhumane youth justice system that we have in Minnesota. And our coalition fights at the county level and at the state level to change policies to ensure that the young people who interact with the justice system are treated with love, are treated with care, and ultimately that we can reimagine the system so that it's our community members, it's people who know and love our kids who are there to step in and support them when they need that help. We're super supportive of all of this work around juvenile life without parole sentencing. We've partnered with coalition members across the state to help elevate this issue, and we're excited to be back at the legislature again this year to fight for change, as well as on a number of issues that span from young people's first interactions with the justice system, with law enforcement, all the way through to the collateral consequences that they experience once they're out of the justice system. One small plug that I'll make, and you can see our friends Terrence and Ali and Jazanay after this event. Hennepin County is closing the Hennepin County Homeschool. This is their correctional facility. And as my brother Kevin Reese has said, this is like the middle passage for so many young people in our community through the county homeschool into correctional facilities, into long-term and lifelong imprisonment. The county is closing the homeschool in March of next year, which presents this amazing opportunity for us as a community to step up and say, we no longer want any of our kids sent to any correctional facility. Instead, we want the $12 million that the county pays every year to incarcerate kids at the county homeschool to stay in our communities, to go into programming, to go into proactive resources, and the reactive supports we know that are necessary when young people need that support. So if you're interested in being involved in creating a community-driven budget and policy platform related to the closure of that facility, you can meet up with us after this event. And next Tuesday, we'll be out at PV Park from 4 to 6. We'll be in the community talking with folks like this to really imagine what would be the solution. What would we want our tax dollars to go into instead of continuing to send our kids to correctional facilities in the county, in the state, out of state as well. So we're super, super thankful to be here, to be partnered with this amazing group of people. We know that this is deep and challenging work. We know that there are young people in our community who need help and who need support. But one thing that I keep holding on to, and I think that all of us can really wrap our minds around, is that just today, at the county homeschool out in Minnetonka, there are 13 kids there. There are 13 babies. And I believe that in this room, we have the imagination, we have the resources, we have the love to provide the support for 13 young people that doesn't require them being in locked cells. And I believe that with the power of this community, we can really, really make a change so that the next young person who is looking for support can find it in us, and that the system isn't in the way taking them from our community. So thank you for having us today. Find us outside afterwards.
Full workout. All right, we really appreciate the words from Malika, and like I said before, tap in with these organizations at their booths after our speakers today. Our last speaker comes from the University of Minnesota Law School, is Perry Moriarty. Perry is a professor at the U of M Law School. She co-directs a clinic that, along with her students, represents clients sentenced to life in prison as juveniles. She is active in legislative and policy reform as well. Let's welcome Perry up here.
Can everyone hear me? Thank you so much for letting me talk with you today. It's a complete honor to be here. Also a liability to be going last because I'm following people who have so many incredibly important things to say, who speak from experience, who speak from proximity, who speak from a point of intimacy that really, really matters and so often is not heard. So I'm going to keep my remarks as short as I can, and I'm going to look to Kendrick, who's going to signal me if I go too long. So as many of you know, I'm a law professor at the University of Minnesota. I co-direct a clinic which represents individuals, many of whom have been justice impacted as kids, some of whom who have been incarcerated as kids, and some of whom have been sentenced to prison for life or even life without parole as children. When the U.S. Supreme Court in 2012 decided a case called Miller versus Alabama and said that states like Minnesota can no longer automatically sentence children to die in prison, we became involved not because we had a lot of expertise, but because, and I think all of you know this, there is a huge gap in legal services here. Once you go to prison in Minnesota, you are virtually on your own. And you are left to figure out if you need a lawyer, and if you don't know why you might need a lawyer, but know that there's been some form of injustice, you get charged an awful lot of money just to walk in the front door. And my students and I thought we could help. And we began representing 2 of 8 people who had been sentenced to life without parole as children, who were eligible, we believed, for some form of relief. But we quickly realized that this was the tip of the iceberg. Once we started going on the inside and meeting people, we realized that there were dozens, if not hundreds, of people who went in as children, did not know, couldn't even fathom what they were being charged with, let alone aid in their own defense, who were languishing, in the state's prisons. And we realized it wasn't just about individual representation. We had to try to change the laws that sent them there. And we've spent 8 years trying to do that, and I'm the first to admit that it's something I'm not very good at, and thankfully we have people like Malika who really are, and we have all of you. And I'm gonna take a moment to talk about what it means to look out here and see all of you. You've all been involved. You've all been involved in a way that I will never understand. You've all been involved because you love people who are impacted. You've all been involved because you have been fighting for them and for their lives in different ways. But before today, before Avra put this together with help from Chucky and a lot of other people, we had not all been in one space. And what is so critical about all of you being here and me looking out at you is there are a lot of things that I actually don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you that so many of the men and women we are talking about who brought us here today are brilliant, compassionate, kind, capable, resourceful, loving people. I don't have to tell you that when they went in to prison, they were children. Their brains were not fully formed, whether we want to talk about myelination or prefrontal cortex development or the amygdala. We all knew that they were children. I don't need to tell you that so many of them didn't have the resources they should have. They didn't have people in positions of authority who believed in them. They did not have the educational opportunities they should have. They did not have adequate mental health treatment. And in some cases, they did not have lawyers who helped them through the process. And I don't need to tell you that so many of these children are now adults, like Myon, who I have had the great privilege of representing. I don't have to tell you that they are extraordinary adults. They are brimming with talent and potential. They are an untapped resource, not just for you, their families, but for all of us, for all of our communities. And what makes this unique is that this is one of the first times that everyone here already knows this and already knows these stories. Over the next several months, I'm going to be working alongside Representative Heather Edelson, who is an Edina representative in the Minnesota House. And she, along with members of the County Attorneys Association and people from the Department of Corrections, are going to be in a series of meetings fashioning a juvenile law reform package that looks to abolish life without parole yet again, that looks to replace it with a sentence that is not just eligibility for parole, but really provides a meaningful opportunity for relief on the outside and for a life on the outside. And the Minnesota County Attorneys Association has agreed for the first time to come to the table and sit down with us. And we are pushing awfully hard for us not just to sit down at a table, but for us to go inside. And for the folks that are going to be making these decisions to sit down across the table from Roberto, or from Levon, or Jante, or Clayton, or Jerry, or Jason, or so many people who they have never met, whose lives and fates hang in the balance. And I'm looking right now at Samantha Flowers, and I think others may know that I also represent Brian Flowers. And boy, would they benefit from meeting Brian. So this is something that's going to be happening, whether we are there or not, but it will be so much better if we are there. It will be so much better if all of you who don't need to hear the stuff that I just said, because you know it and you live it and you breathe it every day, can tell the folks in that room what it is you already know. Be a spokesperson for your loved ones. These people need to hear that these are sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and parents and nieces and nephews and friends that are worth so much more than what they read on paper. They need to hear that they are no longer children, but they are adults who we need in our community. We're paying $40,000 a year at minimum, and I'm looking at Antonio, who probably knows the figures better than I do, to keep people in prison who are my age. And that's like 30 to 30, no, I'm kidding. Who are my age. And who are as, you know, as Preston said earlier, who I would have at my dinner table or next door to me or, you know, or with my child who's here any day of the week. And you already know that. And the people that are making these decisions about their future need to know that too. They need to hear that faith communities support this reform. They need to hear that this is not a get out of jail free card, as some have said, but will involve a robust process that will allow for victim input and families of victims to have their input. They need to hear that other states are enacting bills that give people eligibility for relief after 15 to 20 years. States like West Virginia and Texas, states that we in progressive Minnesota don't like to compare ourselves to, who are way ahead of us. So the people that need to hear from you, the ones that are going to be making these decisions, are members of two committees. They are members of the Minnesota House of Representatives Public Safety and Criminal Justice Reform Committee, and they are members of the Minnesota Senate Judiciary Committee. That is where, on each side of States Congress, these bills will start. Reach out to them. Reach out to them by mail, reach out to them by email, reach out to them by phone, and let them know why. Let them know about who it is you love and who it is not here with you because of these laws. Let them know their stories. This isn't about confrontation. This isn't about anger, although you may have every right to be angry. This is about fact and about redemption and about common sense reform and about children, fundamentally first and foremost. They need to hear that we will all be better. Your families, our communities, every one of us in this state will be better when these children, who are now adults, are back with us. So there's a lot of work to do. And this is a really critical start. And looking out at all of you who are here in the middle of a summer Saturday, because this stuff matters so much, looking out at all of you makes me feel more optimistic than I've been for a long time that this work can finally get done, that these people are worth it. Thank you very much.
All right, y'all. We really appreciate y'all showing up, and like Perry said, dedicating your time on this beautiful Saturday. We do encourage you to take a quick peek at the storytelling room, as we still have just a little bit more time. So if y'all can go check that out quickly, fill out those cards, write to folks that have stories up. We also have an art project, a community art project that you can write down an alternative to juvenile sentencing. And then, yeah, we really appreciate y'all. We really, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, appreciate y'all. So we'll see y'all next time, and stay safe.